Right.
Hey, y'all. We're back on the prison rec yard.
Here we are. If I sound like death incarnate, just ignore that. Just ignore that. Hey, you can support me by sending stars.
Yes.
What?
I don't know how to
What
take
is
that
it?
off.
Okay,
That's
well,
on
I'll
my
just take it off.
Facebook.
I'll just take it.
Can you take it?
That was not the take it off button. Okay.
No, that was
I
the
don't know how
in
you get that
button.
off there.
You do too. You
Mm-mm.
absolutely do.
No.
You're kind
So
of a
that's
life ex.
so I know how to show it on the screen, but I don't know how to keep that comment from always popping up there.
It has to do with my Facebook stream. That's why.
Okay. All right.
Brittany's on YouTube, and what she clearly put an emoji, and it says "person turquoise waving." Hi, Brittany.
Hi,
One
Brittany.
thing about one thing about Brittany is no matter how busy she is and what kind of BS she has going on, because there's a lot going on today. When I ask her to watch me on my social media, she's gonna show up no
She
matter
does it.
what. Yeah.
Even if she's just a
If I
little
post
turquoise person waving, she's there.
right. Yeah, she's good. If I have a video that needs pushed, like the algorithm's not picking it up, I'll send it to her, and she's definitely good for some emoji comments.
Well, this is Diane. Diane is that way for me, and I've always called her my PR person. She's like, "Honey, I've got PR to do today. What do I need to push? What do I need to market? What do I need to comment on?" She's brilliant at it.
Yes,
Everybody needs a
and the
Diane
answer
and a
is
Brittany.
everything. Everything needs it. That's
Everything,
the answer.
absolutely everything. You see it, push it, promote it.
Right, right.
Well, hey, so in on your side, it doesn't show you in the corner, in the left-hand corner, how many viewers there are because it only shows on my channels.
No, it doesn't show me.
Well,
It shows after the fact how many
huh,
actually viewed.
hmm.
So we're still learning. So if you're it's going to get better every time. This is already better, right, than the first round
Yes,
for
I
sure.
think so. And we're
And I'm not
consistent 3 weeks in a row.
yeah. I feel like we should pat ourselves on the back for that.
I do too. We've made
We're
it.
so busy.
No, for
Yeah,
real, that's
yeah.
true. That's true.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. Jobs and advocacy and families and dogs, girlfriends.
Cats,
Yeah.
ex-girlfriends. Oh, maybe
Wait,
that's my part.
skirt. So
Mental
people have
illness.
been, oh, yes. Yeah, that's a big one. And mine's been kind of yucky this week. Uh, and then you haven't been feeling well
Yeah.
because you probably have COVID, but you're not getting tested.
I'm not claiming that. I'm not claiming that,
No,
sister.
I'm not going to put it on you either. I'm not, because you probably don't have it, but you should get tested, Jennifer.
No,
That's what we do nowadays. If you cough, you take a COVID test.
no, you're right. And I've got several in the cabinet that I can take. I'm certainly not going to go anywhere else this weekend. I have a visit that I have to do Sunday at Hobby. But I will make sure to be responsible. Take it. Hey, let me tell you, I don't think Maggie ever told us that me and her, okay, so we went to an advocacy event in McAllen, right? And
Mm-hmm.
one of our people was in the car with us. He got COVID. Like the next day when he got home, he's like, I feel like crap. You guys, I've got COVID. We were like, oh my God, we were in the car. This was at the height of the pandemic, right? So we go to the city of Austin to get tested, Marcy. And it's not the quick swabs, it's the long sticks.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes. The early
Yes, like
test stuff.
so we're in the
Yeah.
car and we get up there and there's lady Maggie's just boss, right? She just has it up her nose and boom, boom. And the lady goes, and I said, she goes, ma'am, I have to put this in your nose. I said, how far? She goes, I have to put this. So she goes, just hold my hand. And she's pushing it, and I'm pulling against her, and she's pushing because I'm a big baby, right? And so then the guy comes up to the car, her supervisor starts screaming, just let her go. You get your hands off of her. I said, she told me I could hold her arm. Anyway, it was a big disaster. We got run out of there. They told us to leave. It was just a big fucking ordeal because I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't put that thing all the way up there. Did you do it?
Because
Did you
you
do
were
the
a
long one?
sissy.
Yes.
I never had to do the long one. I never had to. I was in prison when all of that was happening, and they didn't care about testing us too much. They came by with those long wait. Yeah, nope, and that wasn't even the long ones. They did test us eventually after COVID had been going for about a year and a half, but they came by and we did it. It was the little swab, and they just watched us, which
Probably
was
did
ridiculous
right because
because
nobody's
people
doing
didn't
it
do
right.
it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's doing it right, and they're doing it under their, like, they would just pull their mask out, and inmates would just act like they were doing it because everybody was so scared. They weren't telling us what they were doing. They were moving us out of our comfort zone, and no wonder it spread like wildfire. We weren't getting any information. We were scared. They weren't moving us out to quarantine and then bringing us back. They were completely moving our housing to people and places where we don't know and we're not familiar with, and they made it hard on us.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's even like when we would over the years get the flu. If you tested positive for the flu, they were going to move you out of the dorm and put you in seg. And me and Alexa had the flu one in 2017, Marcy, when it was so bad. It was so bad. That was when I realized I will never go without a flu shot. I was like, no wonder old people and babies die of this because it was horrible. And me and her just hid under our blankets, and it was a winter vacation. So I didn't have to go to the library because school was out, and she would just go to Braille and come back in and just be dizzy, like seeing spots because we were delirious from fever. But we knew that they're gonna and what's the point? You're gonna put us in seg where it's cold and the food's nasty and there's no comfort, or I can just stay buried in my blankets in my dorm. But yeah, no,
I'll
so
tell you
nobody.
what, Jennifer, this is the difference between your Cadillac prison,
Oh Lord,
the
here we
Mountain View
go.
unit,
Here we
and the
go.
dungeons where I did my time on the Dr. Lane Murray unit, because they weren't separating you for having the flu. As a matter of fact, I just did a video on it today because someone asked, what happens if to your cellmate if you're sick? And I'm like, well, they get sick too because you're stuck in that box, and it doesn't matter if you've tested. The only thing I've ever seen anyone get moved for was not scabies, but what is that? What is that that's part of strep throat or part of, you know what I'm talking about? Shingles. I've seen people
Shingles,
get
yeah.
moved for shingles, and I've seen people get moved for COVID, and that's it. And everything else, you were just suffering and writing it out, and everybody was being exposed to it. So
But
let's talk about this snow. I'm getting a whole attitude. They just didn't
Oh,
care about, they didn't care
no,
about spreading that.
you're right. They didn't. Hello, gorgeous junk. I just got to tell you, I really like that name. I just like it. Gorgeous junk. It could mean okay. Um, well, it's not really snow. It's ice. Y'all have a lot of ice there, don't you?
It is ice, but it looks like snow. In my yard, it looks like snow. It's really pretty.
Gorgeous wants to know, are all the women's prisons in Gatesville?
A lot of them are in Gatesville, but there are so many women incarcerated in Texas that they have to have a plethora of prisons. So they have them in Lockhart, in Dayton, Gatesville. I don't know if they still have the Bridgeport.
Yeah.
So no, They have more than that, but the majority, I think, are in Gatesville. Gatesville's just that's all that Gatesville is prisons, I think, and a Walmart and that little steak place we ate, that little restaurant.
Right. That's all it is. It's a prison town. It's mainly women's prisons. There is a men's unit there. Hughes is there, and also those women's units used to be Texas Youth Commission places where boys. There is a little cemetery outside of Lane Murray, in between Lane Murray and what I Sycamore Hilltop, that
Sycamore.
area over there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little cemetery where where they used to bury little kids that they murdered, and who died of neglect and sickness when it was a boys' home, Gatesville Boys School, Reform School. Terrible history, and that's really all Gatesville's got for itself. And that Walmart. Been to that Walmart. Was going to buy some cat pajamas there, and I didn't. That's Alexa. Now she sees we're live. She sees
Yeah.
it. She does this to me. She's done it to
But
me before.
clearly 3 weeks of consistency is not enough for everyone to understand that we're in this. We're in it.
We're in
So
it to win it.
Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock, we're here talking about prison and life after prison and all the things that come with that. So
Well, I mean, we have to start. We're going to look, we're doing one thing at a time here, Marcy. We've got our channel. We just next week we'll be streaming directly to the new channel, and everybody will be directed to go there to see all of our content on YouTube. And we'll start marketing every week. This is what's going on the Rec Yard this week. So
we're going to get
it'll
it together.
look, one thing at a time. We've done it. Look how our restream is going now. You know where to click certain buttons. I know how to.
Well, can you pin this comment? I feel like you're dropping your job because Gorgeous Junk is talking about my mama.
I
She's
didn't see.
talking about the panel discussion.
Oh yes, it was great. Yes, your mother had us all in tears. She stole the show. Yeah, your mom was super sweet and vulnerable, and I'm so glad that she was able to join us for that discussion. It was perfect. How did y'all feel later afterwards? Did you have to decompress, or did you talk on the way home, or you just
Um,
compartmentalized it?
yeah, it just is like it was kind of like an on and off switch. We were right back to just hanging out, and we were just briefly discussed it. So we were on a panel discussion, y'all. We were at the Capitol in Austin, in front of some representatives from some lawmakers, right? So it was important, and we were just talking about women incarcerated, the impact on their families, and my mom participated in the panel discussion with us, and she got a little emotional a couple times, but then she recovered, right? So I just love that she showed her vulnerability, but then like bossed up and told the information that needed to be told. So I was really impressed with her. She was
Mm-hmm.
nervous, so I was just excited that she did so well. So we talked just briefly about that, but we went and had dinner with my kid afterwards, and my kids, they don't want to talk about prison
Mm-hmm.
or that they don't want to they don't ask me about my social media. They don't ask me about even the production with Rosie. They really don't ask about all of that. They want to talk about their jobs and school, and
Right.
so
Well,
yeah, we were just back into
understandable, right? They just, I think my family will talk about it sometimes, but a lot of times we just, I don't know, like it's hard. It's hard. But I thought your mother did excellent. She was she was perfect. Like she
Yes.
seemed like she had done this many times before.
Yeah, I think she did great. I was really happy with it, and yeah, yeah. That families not wanting to talk about prison or it just seems like that's because of our jobs and because of social media and because of advocacy. That's almost just the first place my mind goes with when anything comes up, you know, is how are the ladies in prison handling it? Or this, if this had happened when I was in prison, this would have been, I mean, even it snowed today and somebody, I made a little video and I was at, or it icy snowed, right? But it
Right.
looks like snow in my front yard. So I just went outside and I just remember when it was snow in prison, how somebody would be like, it's snowing, and everybody would run to the back of the dorm and look out the little rec yard window and see the snowflakes just to get a little glimpse. And the laws would be like, get out from back there, get away from the door, out of place, you're out, I'm gonna start writing cases, you know,
Right.
but we would take that risk just to see because it's not something we were going to get to be a part of otherwise for who knows when, you know, and I
Mhm.
just it made me so when I see the front yard, that was my thought. And so somebody commented on the video saying, I think it's really sad that everything reminds you of prison.
Well, I've had people tell me that, Marcy. I've had people close to me, say, Jennifer, at some point you're going to have to move beyond this, and everything that you bring up is about prison. Everything, and it's like, okay, half my life. It was literally half my life. And my closest friends, that are family to me, are still there. So I'm still there. Part of me is still there. So of course everything reminds me of prison. It Everything, absolutely everything. It takes me back to either an experience, or like you said, like I wonder, I'm going to go check on them this weekend. Like how was, do y'all have blankets? How are your jackets? Like I worry about them, not a whole lot that we can do from here. Although in our advocacy spaces, we do have a little, um, I think, a little bit of a privilege to reach out to the right people that could add some pressure every once in a while, and that is helpful. But yeah, I mean, you never get over it and everything, and I don't feel bad about that. I mean, do you ever feel like one day I'll just put this all behind me and never talk about it again?
One day when there's no prisons, like when there's no women in prison suffering,
Mhm.
or you know, when mass incarceration isn't a huge issue in this country. I mean, I can't imagine when that would be. Do I think that could be in my lifetime? I'm not so sure. So the answer is probably no for me. Probably, I can't imagine. I mean, if we're cold, Brittany and I, my girlfriend and I, that's what we're thinking. We're cold, but oh my gosh, our friends that are inside are freezing right now. You know, I mean, that's what we're thinking. Like, that's how our mind goes. So there's too many loved ones we have inside and so many changes that need to be made for the better of our communities as a whole, right? So, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't really ever foresee my life's purpose diverging from any of those, those things concerning advocacy. You know what I mean? Like, how do you? I mean, and I have friends that are like, I got my job at UPS or Walgreens. I've made my a new life. I don't want to look back, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't. I care about them. I just don't want to be reminded anymore. And it's like, well, I mean, what is it? The TikTok you did where the sound clip was the girl was like, I don't watch TV. It was like, okay, you don't get a you
Yeah.
don't get a star for not watching TV.
Right. You don't get an award for not talking about your trauma experience in prison.
Right,
But,
right. And
you
that's good
know,
for you. If you don't want to do that, I mean, that's your way of dealing with stuff. But I just I don't know. I just can't imagine not. I wouldn't know what to do with what was inside of me.
Don't you think it gives you just a little bit of control over your, I mean, for trauma, because I can't think of another word, by talking about it? And in my case, that's the thing. It just makes me feel like I'm a little bit in control of it. Um, it's therapeutic for me. So,
Yeah.
and it might not be for everybody, but
No, I think for me, yeah, because I grew up, you know, in our family culture that you don't talk about things that happen and you just pretend like nothing happened. And we're all going to pretend like everything's great and we're a happy family. Everyone has smiles. No one's talking about any of the horrific things that just happened an hour ago. We're just going to pretend like none of it happened. And see how much damage that has caused me and my brother and my other family members. And it's like, well, I don't know. When you when you speak to something, you're right. You take your power back from it, because I get to control the narrative. Because if I don't, someone will. The state will, for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then only their story will be told, only their side,
Right.
which
And
isn't necessarily an accurate portrayal.
let's see. I've got someone else here. Um, Thanks for sharing your experiences as a nurse. Patients very helpful. Empathy and compassion win. Thank you so much, Nurse Adrian. Do you know this?
Adrian,
Is this one of your?
she's one of my YouTube friends. And if
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's the only platform that I see her on, but she offers some insight on some of my videos on that platform. And I'm always interested in people that work in prison that aren't security, because they don't have that same mind frame that sometimes security can get just from hanging out with. I'm trying to be diplomatic, because believe me, I don't think all correctional officers are horrible, but I do think they can get a pack mentality fairly easily. And so I don't think that happens as often with other staff, right?
Right.
Like
Right. Like the.
teachers and education, and
Mhm.
um, so she's
Yeah,
she
she
was
said
a
I was a
counselor.
counselor. And you're right. Like, I can remember several. The staff in the education building obviously very different with me, and medical staff. You know, I remember there was a lawsuit. I don't know if you recall this. There was a lawsuit. They closed this unit, and I can't remember the name of the unit, but the guys were drinking arsenic. It was in their water. It was contaminated, and so this guy was fixing to be released, but he had put in for his medical records. He was like, why do I keep getting sick like this? So one of the nurses pulled him aside and said, I shouldn't tell you this, and they tell us not to, but y'all are drinking arsenic. Do you ever notice that the staff doesn't drink water here? We all drink out of bottled waters. He was like, what? She was like, mm-hmm. So when you get out, just check. So he got out and pulled all the records from the city, the water, all of it. Big lawsuit. Um, and I remember in the paper it said that the warden of that unit brought a glass of the water and drank it on the stand in front of the judge and said, I don't have a problem. And the judge was like, yeah, but you tell these gentlemen to drink massive amounts of that water during the summer, right? So it's different. They are getting arsenic poison. So what y'all are going to do is you're going to pull that system, this water system out and replace it. Girl, TDCJ closed and shuttered the whole unit before they fixed that and shipped all the guys off to other places. But it was from a medical staff pulling that guy to a side. I had another friend that a medical staff said, you need to look at your lab reports because they did something atrocious to you at the hospital. So I mean, they are just a little bit different than correctional staff. A few times we'd have to go to prison. The guards would usually abandon us in the yard, not escorted. Super fun. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they weren't following protocol or doing any of that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either, but that just goes along with, I mean, just like we've talked about the issue with security in prisons anyway, understaffed, underpaid. Um, you know, that's a lot of them, someone that's understaffed and underpaid and works in a harsh environment oftentimes doesn't care too much about following protocol all the way, which in a prison is, you would think it should be the complete opposite, right? So
Well, and I love that she says this. That they all really cared about the success of the women. Um, I appreciate that, ma'am. And yeah, yeah. It's so hard to find folks that are willing to come in and run a program, be a part of a program, and really care about our success and not just as a job or a paycheck. You know.
and as an inmate, and when you're in that environment and you're talked through or you're talked down to, and you're not felt seen or cared about, when one person that's not another person that's incarcerated talks to you with decency, it has a physical effect. I can't tell you the few times that that's happened where I just almost just want to burst out in tears. Like that's what kind of emotional reaction that brings. It sounds so sad now that I'm saying it out here, but in there, I felt silly for having that reaction. But upon reflection, obviously that was because I didn't get that. So for someone to show you a little bit of humanity, it's really important.
Yeah. Well, and we tell people this all the time, like compassion, just like was just said, compassion and empathy. It goes a long way treating people with basic dignity, and society trying to teach me, hey, it's wrong to hurt other people because you're angry. Um, well, the best way to teach me that is to show me what that looks like, and often that was that was not the case.
I want to
Trying to.
get to these videos too.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
don't
Okay.
Jennifer has a video to show us, but I do want to see, because Nurse Adrian's talking about compassion and acknowledging a person's experience matters, and it
And
is
it's
free.
free.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it matters out here too. That's the quote of the day because it matters, period. It matters inside of prisons, outside of prisons. Let's see.
Gorgeous wants to know, are correction officers in women's prisons women, or is it a mix of women and men?
So when I was in the county jail, the only officers that worked our dorm were female officers. If a man came into the picket, even they made a big announcement. Even if it was a ranking officer or even the sheriff, if he was coming through, they'd make a big announcement so nobody would be on the potty or getting changed or whatever. And then I get to prison, and all of a sudden, nobody cares how many male officers may or may not see me getting dressed, going to the restroom, showering, taking my tampon out, all of that. Very much it's a mix of men and women. Very much men work in the female dorms.
Yeah. It's shockingly, way back in the day, men used to be able to even pat search you, which I can only imagine how horrifying that was. But again, I'll have to touch again on. I can see us we're going to have a showdown one day, Mountain View versus Lane Murray. It's going to be a boxing match. Because it's true. Like, again, how different cultures at different units are. We had our problems with male staff, but for the most part, again, things were followed by protocol there pretty strictly. And again, like we talked about before, I don't know if that's because the people in protective custody there were high profile, or death rows there. There's a lot of media scrutiny at that unit. It's very I don't know. I don't know why it was always strict by the policy, but it was. So when men came in the dorm, and it wasn't very often, we would have men work the dorm, but most of the time it was women, and it was like, man on the floor. It was highly controlled. They were kept out of like, I can only remember just a few occasions um, where men were like obviously inappropriate or watching or something like that. So again, that goes back to
Jennifer,
just
I spent half of my time in cell block where I'm in a cell, and sometimes it would be all men in the building, period.
mhm.
And they're walking around looking in my cell every time that they make their round, and there's no warning to whether they're coming. So if I'm whatever taking a washing off, if it's 100 degrees and I'm taking a quick rinse off, or using the ladies room changing, it didn't matter. I even in the privileged dorm, when I was
Mhm.
in that dorm, the showers are open showers, and there's like a curtain, and you could go upstairs and look directly down and see in the shower area.
Yeah.
And you had some officers that they would be like walking by with their clipboard, so that they didn't even, just so you would know, hey, the camera knew he's not looking, you felt comfortable. He just would walk up that part like this and then take it down and finish his rounds. And then you had other men officers that would
Mhm.
walk to the top of the stairs and stand there, and and the whole shift for as long as they could. And so when you're coming in from the kitchen and outside yard and all of these jobs, and you want to go to the shower, your options are to sit in your own filth and
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And sadly, it got to where I just even showered. I just would go shower quickly, but
Mhm.
because what do you do? That's the environment that we're in. And Nisi's on here, and she was at Murray with me, and
Mhm.
she's calling it out. She knows that was F dorm. So
Yeah, and that's crazy because it's, I did a little when I was 18, so I was in F dorm, FC back when it's still 4 pods, right?
it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And well, it used to be a gym, but I think they changed that to like where they did the dog program for a while. I don't know if the dog
Right.
program's still there, but yeah, the shower. And back then we didn't have any curtains, period. Like the showers were just straight up open. Um, but yeah, like at Mountain View, I mean, that kind of stuff does happen, but for the most part, the men don't walk the runs in cell block. They don't. It's the women. They stay in the picket and pop the doors. But now at Crane, that's a totally different story. I remember being 19, 20 years old, and we had showers and a catwalk, no cameras, but it was a catwalk in 5 dorm, the barn. And yeah, I mean, I was in there showering, and I looked up, and there is the male officer standing there. I mean, just straight up
Mm-hmm.
looking down. And I mean, there's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
So I made a video, right? Of course, I made a video about this, and it was just saying, because somebody asked me this very question. So I just briefly described that scenario in F dorm with the showers, where some officers, and they said, so the feedback from some of that was, well, it's because a lot can happen in the showers, and the showers is where people like to go to fight and fuck, and that's why they have to. Well, but I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is someone who's doing their job and walking by and maybe glancing to make sure no one's fighting or hurt or being held hostage or whatever you think happens, but glancing and moving on. But it's clearly a different story when someone's gawking
Right.
inappropriately,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. No,
So
yeah, because
male
this
or
guy was
female.
leaned up, just straight looking. I mean, there was, yeah, no, Crane was very much, very much just like Lane Murray in that regard. Male officers were horrid, like horror stories. Growing up when I was younger, when I was at Riverside, um, with male staff. Yeah, I was going to put her comment up here. Right. Right. I mean, and really, she's right. Nobody's going to believe you for the most part anyway. They really, I remember even at Mountain View, there was a male staff that the officers really liked. I didn't really care for him, but everybody liked him. Anyway, it's a long story, but I overheard him harassing this very large, somewhat unattractive woman, okay, that she kind of had mental health problems. And she used to say, hey, he says stuff to me like, I'm gonna put my in your mouth, like really vulgar stuff, and it would freak her out. She'd start screaming. They call ICF, come handcuff her, and he'd be like, you know, you know, I don't know what happened. Well, I heard it one day. I walked by and I heard him, and he was doing it under his breath. And I was like, oh my God, she's telling the truth. So I tried to tell one of the female officers, and she goes, oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe that of him at all. And I'm like, I literally heard it. Oh no, who would want to do that? She's big, fat, and ugly. And it's like, okay, well, sexual assault victims are often preyed upon for like, so people don't believe them. And he knows that people won't believe
Mm-hmm.
her. You know what I mean? It's like, it was so frustrating. Um, yeah, so hard to get people to believe when stuff would happen there.
So she's talking, Gorgeous Junk is talking about the Gonzalez escape.
Yes. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Do you want to?
Romero. I don't remember his first name for sure, but his last name's Gonzalez, and he had apparently he had something in his boot that was a weapon, like a shank. He got somehow miraculously got out of his restraints and made his way somehow miraculously to the front of the bus. All of it's so confusing. As someone who's ridden on a Texas prison bus, thank you, Gonzalo Lopez. I don't remember. I don't know. And maybe that's it. But it's I can't figure out how he did it without help. So I
Right.
don't want to get into like a bunch of crazy and maybe not so crazy theories, but I just, on those buses, y'all, it's two officers on the bus, and so one's driving the bus, and there's a gate. They're locked into this gate area, and they're not up against the gate like that they could be stabbed through the fencing. So that was peculiar. And then the officer in the back is armed and also in a cage, locked in a cage. So the fact that he was in leg restraints and arm restraints, and then he had the black box, which was like another level of restrained, and somehow he got out of all of that. But yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was
Yeah,
horrible.
it never made sense to me how he got past not one door but two doors
Mm-hmm.
in restraints. Because there's that section that's gated in before you get to the bus driver. How I just no, there's no way there's no way he did that. I think even TDCJ said, well, he sawed through that first door.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
no
how did you
way.
saw through it without either officer seeing you? And then TDCJ wanted to say, well, he had to have inmates helping him, which is absurd. And first of all, no inmate is going to help him unless something major is in it for themselves.
Right.
Nobody is going to risk the consequences of assisting an escape unless, I mean, and nobody got anything out of it.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just the whole thing. I do want to say that when Carrie Blankinger was talking to the people that were actually on the bus with him, one of the guys said, well, he had a handcuff key.
Yeah.
So my initial reaction was like, oh, who gave him the handcuff key? And that was Carrie's reaction. And the guy's like, no, I mean, a lot of us have handcuff keys. That's something a lot of us have. And I just want to say I never saw anybody or heard of anybody on the female side of prison that had access to a
Right.
handcuff key.
Yeah, right. Like something me and her have always talked about when I'm like, you know, why aren't you doing more about what goes on in the women's prison? She goes, well, I'll be honest with you. She goes, I don't have the cell phone footage. And I said, well, because women don't keep contraband like that. I never, not one time did I see a cell phone or handcuff key or anything major drug wise, maybe some little petty drug stuff. But I mean, women just don't keep that type of stuff. Although I did have a friend that she stole a pair of handcuffs one time. Why? I don't know. But she came back to the dorm. She goes, look what I got. And I said, why did you do that? She's like, because I could. Oh,
Yeah.
she's the same one that she stole the remember they used to have Polaroid cameras for like fights, they'd take the pictures and
Mm-hmm.
she comes back to the dorm with that and a package of film. She didn't just steal the camera from command. She stole the camera and the package of film. I said, "Oh my God." She's like, "Yeah." So what? Of course, what do they do, Marcy? They're all taking
Take
pictures
pictures.
in their
Have
bra and
to.
panties in front of a blanket, so you can't really tell where the picture's being taken at, so they could use it for their pen pal ads. Then we go in
Oh my.
lockdown the next day, so they're terrified that, oh my God, they found out we. So she takes it and beats it into little pieces and hides it in the trash. And then it was like, oh, never mind. It was just they had put us on lockdown for like a couple of hours. And I was like, damn, stole the whole camera in the film. But other than that, no handcuff keys. I'm sure
See,
she would
the
have gotten
guys,
one of those.
I feel like the guys would have taken the camera parts and made a pizza oven or something because that's
Right.
what kind of stuff they were doing in there. We were cooking with our blow dryer and they're making ovens and hibachi grills and
Right. We were way
so,
behind.
well, we didn't want to get, we would have gotten, I mean, if we had had a flame in our housing area, we would be housed. We would be in solitary confinement for a long time. We would
Yeah.
not have visits with our kids. And the guys are like the officer just takes the stuff or acts like they don't see it. It's completely different.
Right. And that's what I mentioned at the panel when Mandy brought up, well, women may not be getting into stuff because they get disciplinary all the time. And I said, ooh, valid, true point that we haven't even hit on yet is the major inequity, the gap between how men are punished versus men. And there's studies on this, and it's real. It's a real thing that men get punished way less than women do. We get major cases for extra hair ties and tampons, and they get, oh, give it to me, let me throw it away, and it's a blowtorch. You know what I mean? It's a shape.
Right.
It's got a,
Right.
you know,
If they're
two
told
wing.
to give it. If they're
Right.
told to give it. I mean, but they're just worried about keeping the peace over there so much more because men are just more likely to riot and rise against, I think, than women are. And not that this is the case for everybody, but just statistically, without saying statistically that I don't know the statistics, so maybe I shouldn't use that word, but women are just more likely to be the caregivers of their children. And so they have more motivation to get home. And that's not always the case because obviously there's lots of times that that's not the case. But I just wonder if that might be some of the reason that women are a little more timid to buck the system. I'm
Sorry, I'm
sorry,
having to
bless you,
sneeze and
bless you.
golly, you see my eyes watering up. No, but I think that was one of the things that they mentioned in this report was that was the very reason is that women will continue to put up with that because they're terrified of not being able to go on their visits, make parole, use the phone. And like you said, it's not that men aren't worried about those things too. They care about their kids too, but they're not the primary caregiver. So that's always on a woman's mind. So yeah, we don't.
Jennifer,
It's
my first month in prison,
oh,
Plain State had a program where, so my daughters were in diapers and they were 1.5 and 3 maybe at this point. They were really little. And it was a program where we could have one visit a month in the chapel, and it was set up with an area where I could sit and play with them and they could run, and it was toys and books. It was that kind of setting. It was really something. So I have one visit like that where I'm allowed it once a month, and it's called a family visit. And so I have that visit. And then 2 weeks later, I had been at that unit for less than 6 weeks, and they called an early count time. There's no clocks. There's
Right.
no watches.
Right.
I'm in the shower when they call it. I hurry, as fast as I can get a t-shirt and shorts on my wet body and run to my bunk, and I'm at my bunk because the guard walks in and says count time and starts counting. And she writes me a case for being in the shower. And it was a minor disciplinary case. That one minor disciplinary case prevented me from getting those visits with my daughter for 6 months. And then by then I was on to Lane Murray, where they didn't offer that.
Right.
But can you imagine what kind of benefit that would have been for my children to have those kind of visits with me instead of the very cold, and guys, prison visits are like they look on TV. They're very sterile. There's a table, there's 2 chairs on either side of the table. It's not. So that's what we're looking at here.
No, yeah, and this happens to women all the time. And it was something when I left prison, I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to resolve this, but every chance I get to nail TDCJ because that's data. You can prove that. All you have to do is pull the number of, disciplinary and look at what type of cases those are versus the kind that men get. You can't dispute that. And how do you resolve that? Well, you start treating women differently because women respond. You can't treat men and women the same way. Staff has to have a very gendered, there was a requirement, I think, for the dignity bills to have some type of training to say, hey, when you're dealing with women and you're a male guard, even a female guard, and you're like, hey, I'm giving you a direct order, do A, B, and C. What do most women we know will say? Why? Why? That's just that women just do that. I don't know if we're just socialized to do that or is the way our brains are. I don't know, but men will just do it. Women will say why, and staff take that as being combative and resistant and oppositional when all it takes is explaining why. And it's trying to change that culture with staff to get them to understand that women respond differently, especially women in prison that have had all this trauma. So when a male tells them to do something, why? It's immediately defensiveness for most women, as a trauma response, and trying to get them to understand that women suffer a lot for things that they really shouldn't have to suffer for.
Very much so. Very much so. Do we have time to dive into do we have time to dive into pregnant women in prison?
Sure. Let's do it.
So I did not encounter very many pregnant women because in Texas they house pregnant women at Texas City. And there's a trustee camp that they go to, and that's right by the Texas prison hospital. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience. I was in county jail one time. It was before I went to prison, obviously. And I was in the holding cell because I think I was supposed to go to court that day, or it was something weird. So I was in the holding cell and somebody came in from prison. So in county jail, anytime somebody comes in, like she was on a bench warrant for a court appearance, but she came from Woodman State Jail from prison. And so, of course, I'm just asking her. I know I'm probably going. I wanted all the details. And anyway, she had just had a baby. And she was there. She had had a baby several months prior to that. And she was there because over a custody issue with her child. So I got to kind of experience a little bit of her story and her pain from that. That she only got to hold her baby a very short time. It like less than hours. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't through the day. It was for a short time after the baby was born.
Yeah. Back in the day, all the pregnant women were actually housed at the Valley unit, at the Crane
Mm-hmm.
unit. And when they got close to having their baby, or sometimes when they went into labor, they would take off and drive all the way to John Seeley, which is in Galveston, to have the baby. So then when Texas City, that unit started housing the women who were pregnant, you didn't really interact a lot with the pregnant women. Because they're all housed there. You may have met them during your diagnostic going through Plain State or in county jail. I met a lot of pregnant women in county jail, which that's a whole nother beast of how pregnant women are treated, depending on the county. But yeah,
Can I
Marcy's,
say something real
yeah,
quick?
uh-huh.
I want to just jump in and say when they transported those women, especially at that time, they were handcuffed and shackled, big, fat, pregnant, trying to, and sometimes in labor. I mean, if you've ever been big pregnant, you know it's a challenge just to keep your balance, period. Can you imagine in shackles when your feet are moving? Just, I mean, I just can't even fathom just that.
Yeah, and several sessions ago, they passed the law that says you can't shackle pregnant women. Um, the caveat is unless there is a real security reason. So they still give them an out to do that because they can always say, well, we thought it was a security risk that, we still had to keep her shackled and bound. But Marcy's right. Women that have babies in prison, you're at that unit and then you'll go to the hospital, have the baby. Some women are lucky to maybe stay at the hospital a day or two. Some women, not so much, just depends on, where they're going to transfer you. They have somebody, your family member comes and gets the child. If you have no one to come get the child, there's going to be CPS gets involved. Somebody's coming to get the state's going to take the baby. It's not an easy I can't imagine going through that as a mother. I have friends that actually went through that process. It's something that she rarely discusses because it was absolutely horrifying, the whole process. Yeah, it's bad. And to not be able to bond with your baby. Now there is a program, and I don't mean to roll my eyes. It's a good program. The problem with it, it's called Bambi. The problem with it is it serves a very small number of women, and it serves women who are lower level offenses, and they get to keep their baby with them at a housing facility and not in prison. But it doesn't. It like I said, we're talking a handful of women that don't really, that the majority of women don't qualify for it. So the baby, you see the baby for a little bit, and then someone comes and gets your child, and then that's it. And then guess what? You going right back on that host squad or in the kitchen or wherever, you're going straight back there. Straight back there. There's no rest. And they used to tell us, right, Marcy, well, your ancestors used to squat and have babies out in the woods and then go back to tilling the fields. And they would put you
They
out there.
absolutely did.
Yeah, sure
Yeah,
did.
they absolutely did. They went back to work still very much bleeding from having the baby, still very much healing. Their body was healing. Yeah, it was rough. There was something that you said before that I thought, oh, about not a lot of women qualified for that program where they could have their baby with them for and even then it's for a more lengthy amount of time, not forever, right? But not only did not a lot of women qualify, but there were only a certain number of beds. So many more women are in there with low level crimes that could qualify, but there's not enough beds for everybody that could qualify.
Yeah.
If that
And
makes sense.
Yeah, and if you're a woman with big time or a serious charge, you would never ever qualify for that because it's an old apartment complex. It's been converted into like a program, so that you wouldn't be able to qualify that. You just have to go and have your baby, and somebody come get it, and that's it. I couldn't imagine that. And I'm not, I don't have children, and I've never had the maternal. I guess I do somewhere inside of me have a maternal instinct as a woman, but I can't imagine giving birth and immediately my baby being taken from me. I can't imagine anything worse.
And then women in prison are dealing with scenarios like this, or scenarios where they don't know where their kids are because the state has them, or a family member is not letting them communicate with their kids. And whether you believe that that's right or wrong, it's still, the bottom line is that incarcerated females still dealing with that. So it puts us a little bit closer to the edge, I think. And it's just easier to push a button of somebody that's going through things like that. So when staff or even other inmates talk ugly and make things worse, I think it's just so much easier for you to get in trouble when that stuff happens, right?
Yeah. Well, too, and Marcy, the the number of women that, and I'm reminded because there was something in the news recently about this woman that um, harmed her children and tried to kill herself. Well, and the children are all deceased, all three of them, because she was in psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is a real thing. It's real. It's not just baby blues. It is psychotic. It's real. Um, and I was shocked by how many women I would see during my first stint that they would go have the baby. They'd be at Valley. They'd go have the baby and they'd come back, and a lot of them either had postpartum, and there were a couple that really did probably had psychosis. Like, I remember this one lady was tearing out revelations out of the Bible in the day room because we used to have a shelf full of Bibles in the day room. And she said, I'm going to write a new one because the devil just came out of, like, she was disconnected from her child. Like, she was like, there was a devil inside of me. And it didn't seem like she was just mentally ill on her own. It really did seem connected to her, like, postpartum, and they had to come get her. Like, there were a lot of women that suffered through that on their own without any treatment. And I just can't
Mm-hmm.
imagine how horrible that would be for a mother to have to go through all of that stuff alone, essentially. And the other women didn't always know what to do or understand it. They're like, what is wrong with this lady? Why is she talking about her kid like that? And it's like, she's suffering right now. She's got, you know, that postpartum has gone to another level. That's real. It was scary. And then not being able to help them. All you could do is tell staff to come get her, and they don't know what to do.
And then the come get her doesn't mean come get her and get her help. It means come get her and isolate her from everyone else, which just is a whole nother. Jennifer, it's almost been an hour. We're
Okay.
at 59 minutes, and I just can't believe it. So I want to tell y'all, we have topics that we have in mind, but you guys just lead it, and it's more fun that way when comments kind of lead the discussion. For sure, we want to talk about whatever y'all want to hear. I definitely need to tell everybody about directing them to our new channel. We have an official channel on YouTube now. So you're either watching on one of our Facebooks or one of our YouTubes, but we're going to have a specific YouTube for this show, and it's going to keep getting better and more organized, we promise.
Well,
So Jennifer, how do they get to tell them how do they get to it? And then I'll put the note in the comment whenever this posts to my platforms. I'll whether you're watching on Jennifer or my YouTube or Facebook or whatever you're watching on, I'm going to put the note on how to get there. But I'll
yes.
tell us.
So
Go for it, Jennifer. How is it?
it's called On the Rec Yard Women's Prison Podcast. So we will need everybody's help to grow it because we're going to have to get our subscribers. It's brand new. There's no videos there yet, but we have to wait till it allows us to start to do the live streaming part of it. But that is where we will be streaming from now on. So we want to make sure that you find us there and help us grow our podcast because we're going to be professional, fancy business ladies like Rami and Michelle. We're going to be business.
Oh, yeah, very professional. Oh, thank y'all for hanging out with us. We appreciate y'all so much. And Jennifer, I hope you feel better. I hope you
I'll
feel
get there.
better.
Thank you.
And okay, love y'all.
Bye, y'all.